It was a busy day on Wall Street, lots of news to digest. Starting with the economy, we got the first read of fourth quarter GDP. It was a solid read, although it was softer than expected. We saw a rise of 2.3% for the quarter. The expectation was for a rise of 2.6%. Now that's off from 3.1% in the third quarter. So what hurt things? For one, businesses invested less in the last 3 months of the year. Exports fell, so did imports. Now the U.S. trade deficit is something that Donald Trump, the U.S. president, says that he wants to shrink and wants to boost domestic production. So that's one part of the story. Now, what helped GDP? Well, personal consumption. That went up by 4.2% for the quarter. That was a very solid read. So Americans kept spending despite inflation that's proven to be quite sticky. And the labor market is still quite strong. We got first-time unemployment claims that came in at 207,000. The estimate was for 255,000 jobs there. So overall, very strong, very solid result. Moving on to corporate news. Moving the market was UPS. The delivery giant says that it wants to cut the volume of business it does with its biggest partner, Amazon, by half by the second half of 2026, and says that it wants to cut costs by $1 billion. Now, on the flip side, IBM, a legacy tech company, delivered better than expected quarterly earnings, and that stock surged 12%, helping the Nasdaq. Tesla also helping the Nasdaq. It jumped more than 4% during the session. That's despite weaker than expected earnings, but it did offer solid guidance. And it said that that much hyped robo-taxi that it's been talking about will finally start rolling out in June. So all of that helping the markets in the U.S. have a positive day despite all of the volatility and despite news that President Trump says he will move forward imposing 25% tariffs on both Mexico and Canada. The Dow finishing the session up by almost 0.4%. The Nasdaq up by 0.25%, and Microsoft was a big drag there, down by 6%. Apple reporting after the bell, and the S&P better by 0.5%. Now, a look ahead to the Friday session, we will get data on PCE, the personal consumption expenditure report. That is something that the U.S. Central Bank looks at very closely, key gauge of inflation. So we'll be watching that. Karina Mitchell, CGTN, New York.